Well, the Browns are at their bye week, and that means it was time for Andrew Berry to deliver us his State of the Team address here early on in the season. He said it was even though he doesn't like the early bye weeks, he thinks this comes at just the right time. But of course, a big topic is still Deshaun Watson and the injury, what happened on Sunday, the long-term outlook. Mary Kay, Andrew kind of offered his end of the story, sort of how he saw it today with how things went down with Deshaun.
Yeah, he sort of reiterated that it was pretty obvious that by the time they got to Sunday and Deshaun tried to go out there and throw passes, that he just wasn't going to be able to do it. So he took it back a little bit from the Deshaun made this decision to more of an organizational consensus. So I think that was important. He tried to sort of shape the message and rein that in a little bit so it didn't seem like, oh, Deshaun was perfectly healthy and just took himself out of the football game. So I thought that was very important. And then, I asked him, did he actually think when he told me on Friday that he was going to be able to play? Andrew said, yes, these guys really do believe that they are invincible to a degree, and he wants a player that really believes that he can go out there and get the job done.
And Ashley, as far as the injury itself, he didn't really offer a ton of clarity on the injury, but we just keep kind of hearing the same things. Everyone is hopeful that this is not going to be a long-term thing. They're fairly certain it's not going to be a long-term thing, but still kind of cloaked in mystery in all of this.
Yeah, I do think, though, what he did clear up, I think there was some confusion on Sunday, is the fact that if he was medically cleared and it wasn't a pain tolerance issue, then what was it? What led to this decision of him not playing? But the driving the ball down the field thing, and we know Andrew was obviously out there for that workout when Deshaun was making those throws before the game to kind of test things out. So I do think that was key. But yeah, we haven't gotten an exact explanation on what it is. Like Mary Kay has reported, there's no structural damage, they've said, but still some mystery there.
And frankly, no one has just come out and said, yeah, he's good to go for San Francisco. Maybe that's just a timing thing. We'll see. We got plenty of time to hear that. On the offense itself, Mary Kay, Andrew really harped on the turnovers. He really pointed to those as a reason why this offense was struggling to get going. They've turned the ball over 10 times. He also pointed to some other times when the ball was on the ground that they didn't turn it over, but obviously that kind of torpedoes a drive or torpedoes a play. So turnovers were really big for him today.
Yeah, they're not getting the takeaways on the defensive side of the ball, and they are turning it over on the offensive side of the ball, and that doesn't help matters because usually you lose the football game about 80% of the time when you lose the turnover battle. They've lost it all 4 times this season, so they've got to stop doing that. They've got to protect the ball, but that also means you've got to protect your quarterback. There's a lot that goes into protecting the football.
Yeah, Andrew pointed to decision making, but also, there's just more that they have to do to make sure that ball doesn't come loose. And I've got to think while he was sitting up there, he was thinking, Ashley, about that TJ Watt touchdown return specifically.
It's kind of hard not to, right? When you think about those touchdowns that the Pittsburgh game got, they gave up 2 because of turnovers. So I do think it's hard. I think it's interesting. We've heard the defense talk about not pressing to create takeaways because that can sometimes leave you more vulnerable to explosive plays. But offensively, I think he really did hammer home that protection aspect of things and that it's not just on the offensive line. He did talk about the tackle situation and stuff a little bit, but it really is on everyone in protection to take care of the football because he said it's not sustainable to keep winning games like that.
Well, let's talk about those tackles because, like you said, Ashley, he did bring those up. And, of course, Jed Wills. He said that Jed knows he can play better, he can perform better. And he had high praise for DeJuan Jones, who has been thrown into a situation to start at right tackle much earlier than anyone anticipated him playing.
Yeah, you know what? It was the state of the tackles, and Jed has taken a complete beating so far this season, and Andrew did acknowledge that he's got to step up his game, and he did say, he's a part of our future, and he does need to play better. So I'm sure you'll see that going forward. But as far as DeJuan is concerned, DeJuan has used all of his resources. He's talking to Joe Thomas. He's watching film. He's talking to other people. He's doing everything that he possibly can to get better at this job. And I think when you look at his technique on film, you can see he's doing some really, really good things with his handwork, with his footwork, and his pass blocking is really good.
Yeah, Ash, I mean, it's going to be a topic of discussion with one left tackle who, a lot of people view as struggling, another one who's very young, and, with the interior of that line still so strong, those tackles are going to be the focus.
Yeah, I mean, I think rightfully so. That happens in most cases, but I think Jed Wills has drawn a lot of ire so far this year. We see it from fans on Twitter, which has been typical throughout his career, but even just his numbers in pass blocking and run blocking and things like that you can tell it hasn't been what you would want a starting left tackle who's a former first-round pick to kind of put up there. But I do think, everything's magnified when you have that Jack Conklin injury and you have to give a guy like DeJuan Jones more help. You can't really help on Jed Wills' side anymore. So there's a lot, I think, to figure out there.
Okay, one more thing. So, Mary Kay, you wrote on Tuesday that you think the Browns should trade for Jonathan Taylor. Andrew Berry did not want to talk much about the trade deadline today, but he did seem to throw some water on the idea of adding a running back, especially the caliber of Jonathan Taylor at this point from the Colts. I guess just your thoughts on Andrew's approach to that.
You know what? I just think that they really need to seriously address their running game going forward. Once Nick Chubb went down, it seemed like, okay, they'll be able to accomplish the running game with Jerome Ford, with Kareem Hunt, and then also with Elijah Moore. It hasn't really worked out that way. They are coming off 2 games against really stout run defenses, so it won't always be this hard. But it's going to be hard again against the San Francisco 49ers on October 15th. I think they should rip a page out of the 49ers playbook where they went out and traded for Christian McCaffrey last year in October, and he helped them get to the NFC Championship game, almost the Super Bowl. So I don't think it can hurt. I don't see it in the cards for the Browns, but they do have to find a way to accomplish this run game.
Yeah, it has worked out pretty well for the 49ers at least. But Ashley, Andrew just didn't seem real interested in engaging in that idea of adding to this room right now.
Yeah, I mean, which I think is interesting because I do think this bye week, like the run game and what it looks like in a post-Nick Chubb world is kind of what this team has to figure out because it's the reality they're living in for the next year or so. And I think even if they are happy with this room and don't add to it, you have to figure out, okay, what works best for Jerome Ford? How can we use him? How can we put him in positions to succeed? And not just be running the identical game plan you would be if Nick Chubb was still here. Because Jerome is not identical to Nick Chubb. You can't replace what Nick does with one person.
Okay, we'll have a lot more from what Andrew Berry had to say today. It was about 40 minutes long, so we'll have a lot more coming at cleveland.com/Browns. Right now, though, we've had this bee flying around us this whole video, so we got to wrap this up. Just check out cleveland.com/Browns for full coverage.